Welcome. My name is Len Lane, and I am the founder and president of Brokers for Life, Inc., and we are Dominion Lending Centers in Western Canada. The topic of our podcast will be about what we consider to be real-life mortgage solutions.
Welcome back. We're already into January of 2025. It's hard to imagine how fast this year is going by already. My guest today is Shane Parker, King's Counsel. King's Counsel is new for him as well as the rest of us. He is a partner at Parker Dubrule Szaskiewicz, or PDS Law, whichever one you want to use. So Shane, welcome to the show.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Len. And sometimes we joke with our name, Parker Dubrule Szaskiewicz. It's hard to, you enunciated that very well. But we have a registered trade name, PDS Law, which is usually easier for people to remember. But happy to be here and to review mortgages and real estate.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was easier when it was just Parker Dubrule, but now you throw in that third one there, so it makes it a little longer. You know, lots of changes you and I have seen. We were discussing how long we've been at this, and it's going on 30 years for both of us between real estate and mortgages, and in my side, and straight real estate law on your side. You know, probably one of the biggest conversations we're having with clients lately is that the change in the cost of registering a mortgage title in Alberta had a considerable change, actually, and one we haven't seen for quite a while. Maybe address what change you're seeing on your end.
Yeah, and I think it's a good practical issue. And, we've both been around a long time, and land titles fees they've gone up. And there was a period where they actually went down, which was kind of welcomed, as part of the industry. I think there's a good argument that, land titles should certainly pay for itself, but doesn't need to charge enough to make a bunch of profit. And I think that's debatable, and I leave that for others to argue. But fees have gone up and down over my 30 years. Recently, they've gone up, and I respect on the political side that we apparently still have some of the lowest registration costs across Canada. So I appreciate that. Our provincial budget that came out in February of 2024 announced land title increases that came into force on October 20th, 2024. So that means documents that were submitted on or after October 20 had the new fee structure. So what does that mean for? Typically on the mortgage broker side, you're acting for purchasers. Generally in real estate, it's a purchaser who incurs the cost of registration at land title, so registering the transfer and the mortgage. So pre-October 20th, if I use it as an example, a $500,000 property and a $450,000 mortgage, those land title registration fees would be approximately $330. And it's always a function of the value of the property and the amount of the mortgage. So that's still what it is, but except the numbers are increased. So today, registering a $500,000 property would be $550. Registering a $450,000 mortgage would be $500. So a total of $1,050. So comparing where we were, $330 to today, $1,050, 3 times the cost. And again, that would vary size of the transaction, but a pretty significant increase. And it affects purchasers. It's a closing cost that it is what it is. Now, what we try to do, like other lawyers, we really try and be careful explaining all about cost. And in my mind, cost has 3 components: legal fees, disbursements, GST. Legal fees, that should be broken down separately. Disbursements should be true third-party costs paid to third parties like land titles. In real estate, the biggest disbursement is land titles. Other disbursements include things like couriers. And couriers, too, have gone up over the years. $45 for a courier. Typically, on the purchaser side, we have to courier out the closing funds on the closing day to the seller's lawyer, who then coordinates with the realtors to release keys. So all costs going up. I'll try and explain that effectively to people so there's no surprises. And then GST of about $200. And so we do that on our side. We have it posted on our website, which a lot of law firms do. It's going to be transparent about cost. But to your narrow point, have they gone up? Yes.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Two things there in that you actually still have to courier money to other lawyers in 2025. That part hasn't changed, I guess, or sometimes over the years, but it's a cost that we're seeing some of our lenders. One of the big red bank does a cash back to the client, and they've actually increased it to cover some of that. We're also seeing it in the title insurance companies where they've had, obviously, everybody has had to increase it, and they've changed their numbers quite a bit as well. So you've seen tens of thousands of files, I'm sure. Probably lost track a long time ago. So what are some of the biggest issues you see at closing that could have possibly been avoided?
And I think that the challenge in this kind of, there's different parts of the real estate ballpark, and they each have issues in common. But from the mortgage broker perspective, which is typically involved in, purchase and mortgage transaction, one of the challenges is conditions not being met between, not so much on the broker, but with the lender. And we're not on the law firm side. We get instructions from the bank. Bank will tell us to comply with 1 to 10, and we comply. I sometimes joke it's the golden rule. Banks have the gold, they make the rule. If they say comply with 1 to 10, I respectfully do and make sure we check off the boxes properly. But what we found, and I reviewed with the legal assistants here, which, one of the things I sometimes joke about, legal assistants do 90% of the work. They may say 99, but they clearly do a ton of the preparation work so that I'm left with 2 inches of documents to review with the client. And one of their, when I reviewed with them, again, it's something that I'm aware of is we're not aware if there can be certain internal conditions between broker and bank that may not be satisfied that we're not aware. And so that affects timing. The other thing that happens is, again, a version of the golden rule. Perhaps banks have the gold, they make the rule. We can get new conditions from a lender all the way up to the funding time. And so if there's new conditions that are imposed, respectfully, we have to comply in order to process the funds. So, and that's probably the biggest challenge from where you sit, perhaps, and from where I sit is solving the bank, making sure, because out of the transaction, I'm pretty straightforward and simple guy. 3 things happen in real estate. A seller gets paid, a buyer gets good title, and the bank gets good security. Well, what does good security mean? Good security means they're registered typically as a first financial charge in the property, and we've complied with all of their requirements. And if their requirements are evolving, it's hard for us to match that if the closing date is the next day.
Yeah, I can see that being an issue. Yeah, and it's interesting. It's one of the things that I guess we can teach with our new agents all the way through, and we're training a ton of them at the moment. But the bank asks you for something, or the lender asks you for something, they're asking for a reason, and make sure that it happens far enough in advance that the day of closing is not the day we want to do this. It's
and I try to be respectful and courteous of all the parties. Everybody is trying to do their part. Mortgage instructions may come out closer to possession than I would like, but there could be reasons for that. So what I try and do with the purchaser is give them comfort that, I have the contract typically from the realtor. I have mortgage instructions from the broker/bank. I put those together. We generate our paperwork and we work towards closing. So it's not really about assigning blame. It's about a team effort to close the deal in accordance with the contract, hit that closing date, because, potentially significant repercussions if you don't close on time. If you don't close on time, it's a breach. Breach at a minimum, you're paying interest on the monies and you may not be getting keys.
Right. And that's something we've always emphasized. We missed one closing this last month because of a lender that changed something at the last minute. And that we didn't know about. And in all honesty, with our 18 years of experience in mortgages, I can count on one hand how many we've actually missed because of that. And it's rare, but yeah, they like you said, they have the gold if they decide at the last minute that something else is going to change, or if a broker didn't get the paperwork to them fast enough, that that causes issues all the way around. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that after 30 plus years, it really is a team to close, with the realtor on the front end, the mortgage broker, and then the lawyer, and good communication with all parties. And if a bank requests 1 to 10, we comply. Now, certain things we may have to amend and tinker with in order that we can properly comply, but that's the goal, and really hasn't changed in 30 years. I like to say timing is going to get better, but I assume it won't. So I try and I know right before this meeting, I had somebody swing by. Closing tomorrow. Bank issued new mortgage instructions, which tinkered with dates, and bank wanted paperwork re-signed. And so we got them in. Closing tomorrow, hopefully will still happen. I think it will. But again, it's not, you can't get frustrated. You deal with the basket of issues and you move things along.
Yeah, that kind of segues into the next part. So clients come into your office. How can they be better prepared, I guess, to I'm sure you give them a long list. We've done this with you a couple of times personally. So we're but I'm aware of more things than some of our regular clients would be. So what is it that they can do better, or what do they really need to have and pay attention to make sure that everything, when they get there, they're only going to go there once?
You bet. And that's the goal, is try to have a streamlined process, take some frustration and anxiety out of the process, explain that they are protected in the transaction. But the same way, I think the realtor and the broker on the front end is, we really need a purchaser to be diligent in their own affairs. They need to read the documents that come to them. We typically send out an email from the legal assistant, that breaks down what's required. Identification is a key one. Our identification rules are all they're being reconsidered, perhaps yearly. But we basically say bring in 2 pieces of picture identification, preferably driver's license and passport, both current. All banks want at least 1 piece of ID. Some want 2. Some are specific about what they won't accept. So we tend to be very specific in our email to clients, saying bring in A and B. And so that's one thing. Just in with respect to the purchasers, they may miss something, and they've got a lot going on with the purchase. They could be moving from one place to another. They've got kids. They've got dogs. They've got a lot of things going on. But I would say, when you get the email from the lawyer, typically the lawyer's assistant, diligently review what's required, bring those things with you to the appointment. Questions, you can call the lawyer or the assistant to clarify ahead of time. So I think it just, probably from where you sit too, good communication always helps. But most times people they've read the email, they've complied, and so our appointments tend to be pretty smooth, going through what's important for a purchaser to feel comfortable with the closing documents.
And identification changed for us as well back in October when the AML rules came in full force with us. Fortunately, because of the background system we use through Dominion Lending, that's now first step. Doesn't matter. You get starting an application, sure, you need a letter of employment or pay stub, but identification needs to be in every file already for us. So they're well aware that that is part of what the program will be all the way through for them. So
yeah, and that's with identification. So in person, great. I always prefer to meet with people. We'll see people in the evenings. We'll see people on the weekends. But there's occasions where people are out of country or out of province, where we can see people on a Zoom, on an online video conferencing session. Those rules are constantly evolving, and the ID requirements are as well, where purchasers have to upload identification to a third-party software company, and that ID either gets approved or not. We had one recently that was not approved, a combination of change of names and moving different provinces, where I didn't have a concern that the couple weren't who they said they were, but one passed, one didn't. Therefore, we couldn't do the Zoom. So the next option is they have to go see a lawyer in BC to sign up my documents and then return the original ink signatures.
Right. So yeah, ink signatures were pretty much the only way at one time, right? But So that just because of those switches, we use a company called FastKey, and so that kind of does the same thing. But the AML rulings for us is if we pull the credit bureau and there's less than 3 years of credit bureau, then we have to actually do exactly the same thing. Take the driver's license, run it through the system, make sure they are who they say they are, right? So I think that's it's come a long way, because I'm sure there was for years that nobody, until you actually got to the lawyers, nobody had ever checked ID and stuff like that in a lot of cases.
No, and so you're right, and even the realtors. I mean, the realtors have to know your client and verification rules. Mortgage brokers and certainly under the Law Society, we follow those guidelines. There can be, again, in person is always preferred. And with our land title system, we require the original ink signature back. And so that's a bit cumbersome. And that surprises some purchasers, because they typically, or they could sign the the Alberta Real Estate Association standard form documents with DocuSign. A lot of the world works well with DocuSign, but our land title systems requires that ink signature.
Yeah, it really was the pandemic that brought the DocuSign to the forefront for us, even right up until 2021. Scotiabank, everything had to be signed live, right? So the use of DocuSign wasn't accepted at all. Even ATB, who for the longest time was the same, well, now we accept that, but then you have to give them the DocuSign confirmation as well. That's pretty simple to do, right? So yeah, it's a changing world when it comes to anything that needs to be signed.
I think that's right. And in the goal of all the team in the closing of a real estate matter, I think good communication, timing is always going to be less than ideal. And so we try and be as flexible as we can, and try and give that purchaser some comfort to know that we're going to navigate this together. And more times than not, it turns out just fine.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing, working it together. Hugh and I have worked on a few deals, and I think that your support staff is excellent. They're on top of things well in advance, so that always helps the closing as well.
And I make the joke, and it's probably not a joke, is when I meet with the people, I always give them, I say that I'll give you the more important card first, and that's the legal assistant, because the legal assistant will always know what's going on. I tend to not, unless there's a problem, then we figure out how to fix it. So you're right, it's a team effort within the law firm, between the legal assistant and the lawyer, but we'll guide people through the process. But the earlier we get the contracts from the realtors, the earlier we get mortgage instructions, the more flexibility we have with people in scheduling into their availability, and then closing on time, which is the goal for everybody.
Yeah, and that's one key part, and it's great that you work evenings and weekends, because there's definitely tough to do for a lot of people to tear away when you're in the process of booking and movers and utilities and doing all that other stuff at the same time. So
yeah, and a lot of us different professionals in real estate, you have to be flexible. I know for myself, I don't think I work any harder than anybody else, but if I work a Saturday or a Sunday, it may mean I can golf on a Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, it's funny. I just had that conversation with somebody the other day. Weekend is a state of mind around our house. It's not a day on the calendar, right?
I like that. And I know somebody said, it takes 12 months to make a year. Some months are busier than others, or 7 days to make a week. And if you can be flexible, that people tend to appreciate it. And then you can carve out some different time for yourself.
Yeah, excellent. So, and I think we'll end on that positive note. Shane, thank you very much for your time today. It's always good to get the other side of the view from for our clients, so that they understand what they're to expect, I guess, when it comes time to finally sign off those documents. So,
well, Len, I appreciate the opportunity. You have a great day, and we'll see you later this year.
Thanks for listening today. I hope you found the information that we provided to be useful in your mortgage journey. And remember, you can always find our associates at www.brokersforlife.ca/associates. Have a great day.